What's going on? Welcome in to another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. It's Lucas and Tyler hanging out with you on Friday, November 4th, 4:30 p.m. Central Time. I'm at Lucas Wenzel on Twitter, Tyler_Plath, FF Fellas on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on TikTok and YouTube, where you should be subscribed and you should have your notifications on for when we release new videos, just like our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts from. And Chalkboard too, man. We've been dropping some really good stuff over there. We're getting really active over on our Chalkboard. We're going to start bringing you all home some championships this year. You can go join community full of league winners, group chat of waiver advice, trade advice, start sit advice, anything in between. Down in the description of the audio podcast or YouTube video you are listening to. Ty, how we doing, man? Week 9 underway.
Week 9 underway with one of the most surprising games. That's probably the most surprising game of the week, dare I say.
Did you expect the Texans to put up 14 points? Because I didn't.
I didn't expect that, and I did not expect Dameon Pierce to have 27 carries for almost 140 yards. 27 totes. We'll talk about him here in a second because we're going to do a Thursday Night Football recap. But we got full slate today, starts of the week. Quite a few news updates here. It's a player props at the end. How can I forget about the player props at the end? From our friends over at Underdog. Can't forget about that.
Let's start recapping Thursday Night Football, though. Normally, right, I've wanted this segment to be like 3 big questions from Thursday Night Football. I can't even come up with 3 big questions because that's just what kind of a game it was. Like, the Eagles were going to win the game, and they did win the game. So I just want to recap the highlights from last night, and it's pretty much all on the Eagles side of the ball. Jalen Hurts, 20 fantasy points on the evening. Not his best day ever. But I mean, it'll still take 20 points from Jalen Hurts. He did it effortlessly. 21 of 27 for 243 and 2 touchdowns. 9 rushing attempts for 33 yards on a 2-point conversion, and did lose a fumble. But this is what you expect from Jalen Hurts, and they didn't need him to do much more than that.
No, and the ground game was working wonders for them. So they did not really need to rely on Jalen Hurts a whole lot. The Texans couldn't stop the run.
No, because Miles Sanders went for 15.3 fantasy points, 17 attempts, 97 yards, and a touchdown. Just as you figured, a 100-yard rusher for the Texans. That's not, or a 100-yard rusher against the Texans. That's not all that uncommon this year. This is the game you expect from Miles Sanders and any running back against the Texans. And even Kenneth Gainwell got in on the action. 12.8 fantasy points, 4 attempts for 22 yards and a touchdown. Added 3 receptions for 16 yards as well. Can we make an observation, though? Can I make an observation?
Sure. What's that?
Kenneth Gainwell only scored 1.1 less fantasy points than Dameon Pierce in PPR formats.
I saw that. I saw
whose
tweet
on
was it? Yeah.
20 less touches. What?
Stupid.
Because Dameon Pierce had 13.9 fantasy points on 27 rushing attempts for 139 yards. That man did everything he possibly could for the Texans last night. Is he I know people were terrified, initially it was Dameon Pierce was going to be one of the most overdrafted players this year. Is he becoming one of the sneaky best values drafted this year?
I think probably, yeah, but I think the other way to describe it too is that he's one of the very few players that has come through on the hype so far this year, right?
Sure.
When it got to about draft time, lots of people were like, you got to go get Dameon Pierce. You'll reach for him if you need to. He is the real deal. He's looking more of the part than some of the guys that are getting some first round hype like Najee Harris, than guys each running back has had their share of disappointments.
Right.
It doesn't feel like Dameon Pierce has ever hit a oh, that's frustrating, or that's back-to-back weeks, just bad performances.
I mean, he did that to start the season. 4.9 in week 1, 8.7 in week 2, but then ever since 18.1, 25.9, 20.3, week 6 by 15.7, 14.1, 13.9. He's the running back 10 on the season. So if you bought in on the Dameon Pierce hype, you are reaping the rewards right now. Like, you watch how this dude runs. Like, it's incredible. He does not go down. It makes you wonder why they wouldn't feed him the ball more at Florida. We could sit and do a Dameon Pierce chat for hours. We should keep things moving, but go ahead, get your last 2 cents in here.
This is just a dynasty kind of outlook thing, but this kind of running style that he has, I don't know how long it can last. And I know that sounds also very, very pessimistic, but he runs so hard. He's either going to be the wear and tear or he's going to pick up some kind of injury because he is going so hard. Needless to say, though, just enjoy the moment right now with Dameon Pierce. He's really, really good.
Because you brought up Dynasty, I'll give you Tyler Algier and Brian Robinson straight up for Dameon Pierce. I think I've said that trade to you about 5 times with draft picks. And I'm like, do I do it? Do I not?
Well, no, sorry. Give me your next 3 first.
That's fair. That is fair. A.J. Brown also had a nice night for 4 receptions on 6 targets, 59 yards and a touchdown. Chris Moore, there was no Nico Collins, that's the name I was originally looking for, or Brandon Cooks last night. Chris Moore got 5 targets, 4 receptions on those 5 targets for 43 and a touchdown. You're not looking forward to him on a given week? Like, you're not rushing to pick him up after this week?
No, I mean, the touchdown is a big part in his stat line. I'm not going to sit here and say, like, well, if you take away the touchdown, it's only 8 points. But there may be some values still, but it is not a, like, number one must-have, gotta-have priority ad.
No, I 100% agree, and you'll probably get Nico Collins back here soon, and we'll see how long this Brandon Cooks saga lasts with the Texans before he comes back. But regardless, Chris Moore is not someone I am rushing to on waivers by any stretch of the imagination. That was a Thursday Night Football recap where the Eagles took care of business over the Texans, as they should. Let's move on to some quick news and notes from around the league, powered by our friends over at Sleeper. #1 fantasy football platform in the world. It's where Tyler and I get smoked by Cameron in all of our fantasy football leagues because Cameron builds super teams and people just want to graciously give him studs for Cameron's depth pieces. This is the second episode in a row I brought it up, but every week I look at our Dynasty league and I just wonder how he got the team he did, and it's just not funny. It's not funny. I'm hurt. You can join over 4 million people on Sleeper by using the link below down in the description of this audio podcast or YouTube video you are listening to. Tyler, big news broke a couple hours ago. Jonathan Taylor officially ruled out for Sunday, according to Frank Reich, just as we had feared. You firing up Deion Jackson this week now?
It's tough because it's New England and it's Sam Ehlinger, who is not afraid to run the ball. And I did not see a whole lot of checkdowns last week against Washington. And not saying that's what Matt Ryan did to Deion Jackson, but Deion Jackson is a PPR machine when he gets his chances. Right. I feel like you kind of have to because of what we saw, but I would maybe look elsewhere. It's not the most confident. I don't have the most confidence in him just because it's New England.
Yeah, I'm not rushing to put him into my lineup. That is for sure. He was my #1 stash of the week, but yeah, I'm not rushing to play Deion Jackson this week, unfortunately. Keenan Allen also ruled out for Sunday, dealing with his hamstring issue. Brandon Staley had said earlier this week his hamstring didn't react the way they wanted it to. Keenan Allen then came out and said himself he wasn't going to play until he was 100% healthy. I mean, this is just bad news bears.
I talked about this a little bit on the preview episode back on Thursday. One, not going to sit here and say told you so when it was a shock to a lot of people that Keenan Allen played the week before their bye coming off his hamstring injury. But told you so. Like, that was just dumb. That was just dumb. There was no need to do that. Then secondly, I chose Atlanta to beat LA this week. Like my upset pick.
Oh.
LA has nothing on offense besides Austin Eckler. And even at that, the way that you beat this team is through the air. Sure, Josh Palmer will have a decent week. DeAndre Carter could have a decent week. But the Chargers are not the Chargers from last year. Last year, easily the Chargers win. But Atlanta at home, again, with their run game, I don't know, man. I'm not going to pinpoint the misfortune on Keenan Allen, but your team is going to miss you dearly on Sunday. That's all that I'll say.
Very much so. And what was weird is that Austin Eckler popped up yesterday on the injury report, was in limited practice with an abdomen injury, but he's off the injury report now and he will play Sunday. So I don't know. Are we going to talk about him later at all? Do I need to say anything about him?
Oh, he's just fine. He came off the injury report today, so.
Right. I didn't know if you were. I think he's going to have like 1,000 yards receiving on Sunday because he's the only option.
Foreshadowing.
Well, that's why I was asking if we were going to talk about him later, so I wasn't going to say too much.
Yeah. Subtle foreshadowing. Stay tuned till the end when we talk about Austin Eckler.
Michael Thomas. I'm going to do it 3 episodes in a row.
Victory lap number 3, folks. Victory lap number 3.
On the IR. Are you kidding me?
Are you kidding me?
I'm not a fortune teller or anything. But why? I will say it for like the 50,000th time. Why do we never get updates on Michael Thomas injuries? And then they end up being so much worse. I can't believe it. I absolutely can't believe it. From the moment he got hurt, I knew I was going to be terrified of he's going to miss extended time, and he has missed more than extended time. He is going to potentially miss 75% of the season. Oh my goodness. Michael Thomas will undergo surgery on his toe. I told you so. Not to have that rhyme, but man, I told you so. Rashad Bateman. On a more sad note, Michael Thomas is also sad. I shouldn't make light of that.
He refused the nickname Slam Boy, and this is what you get for not accepting it.
And then he said your favorite fantasy doctor lied to you and that you should unfollow them. And now look at what's up, Michael Thomas. So
sorry about
shrug emoji. Rashad Bateman, he will miss the rest of the season with his foot injury. Just a bummer for the second-year potential breakout wide receiver. This is just brutal, too, because now all of a sudden the Ravens have a lot. They brought in Roquan Smith. They're going to have to pay Roquan Smith. They paid a pretty penny to get Roquan Smith over to Baltimore. They're going to have to pay him. They're going to have to pay Lamar Jackson. Rashad Bateman. They don't have to pay Rashad Bateman, but, where does the focus become all of a sudden for that team? They might have to bring in other weapons to make sure that, they can't even bring in other weapons. So maybe Rashad Bateman is safe, but at the same time, this Ravens team, I have no clue what direction they're going in right now in this offseason.
I think the only thing that would make it worse is if they lose Greg Roman to a head coaching spot. That would be the worst thing in the world for the Ravens.
At any rate, yeah, Bateman will not be playing the rest of this year. You can safely drop him in all your leagues. Last piece of news that I think is relevant. Cam Akers returned to the practice facility on Thursday. What make you of this?
I freaking hate this. Not because like I am a huge fan of the Rams or anything, but it's just this carousel of just like, well, Cam Akers is mad at McVay, and it's a surprise to him that he wasn't getting touches, and then Akers gets touches, and it's not super great. And then he's just like, oh, it's the scheme or whatever. And then he's away from the team, and then they say like, okay, we'll try to move him, and then like the Rams, I don't know, apparently they try to trade Akers, but teams are calling the bluff. They're like, you're not gonna play Akers, like you either cut him or you keep him. Like no one's gonna trade for it. And now he's back, and it continues this weird season for the Rams of just like nothing's going for them. In all honesty, there's just, for what you expect from this Rams team, it's just not the same, and it's extremely disappointing. And this just adds another layer of just frustration over the top of it.
Right. Yeah, and we'll see how this backfield shakes out. But I mean, still going forward, I want nothing to do with Cam Akers. You probably dropped him a long time ago, but if you stashed him, yikes, that's been a tough bench spot to hold on to. That wraps out our news and notes from around the league, brought to you by our friends over at Sleeper, the #1 fantasy football platform in the world. If you want to join over 4 million people over on Sleeper, use the link down in the description of the audio podcast or YouTube video you are listening to. All right, Ty, let's get on to it. Starts of the week. It is a Stardom Saturday episode. As always, we start at the QB position. Who is your start of the week at quarterback?
I'm taking a page out of your book, Lucas, and I'm starting none other than Captain Kirk Cousins, okay?
Captain Kirk Cousins, baby.
And yes, if this is not a home game, so it's probably not the most ideal scenario to start Kirk Cousins, but game time is still at noon, and it's a revenge game. It's a revenge game. Not that Kirk Cousins in Washington left on bad blood or anything, but first game back to the old team classifies as a revenge game. So, like I mentioned before, this is a noon kickoff. And this Vikings offense is taking on a Washington secondary that really is no match for this scheme and for Jefferson and Thielen. Washington's defense so far in the year is allowing the 12th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. Again, not the highest, but they're allowing the 4th most points to wide receivers, and that to me says there's opportunity for more a top 10 finish, in my opinion. Here's some inside info, though, courtesy of our friends over at the 33rd team from their Edge tool, which is oh so awesome and helpful.
Washington is free for you to use too.
Yeah, it's free.
Sorry, didn't mean to butt in.
No, you're good. They didn't pay us to say it. If you like,
it's totally free.
It's totally free. Washington is allowing the 6th most fantasy points from the slot. Guess where O'Connell likes to run this offense out of? The slot.
The slot.
The slot. So this favors the offense, favors Kirk, everything like that. Go ahead and fire up Kirk this week. I'm not going to sit here and say expect 25, but you should get a really good, solid day from Kirk Cousins.
You want to know who else you're going to get a solid day from?
Take it away.
Going to get a solid day from Bussin' Fields, baby. Justin Fields, my start of the week at quarterback. Bussin' Fields, baby. He has been the quarterback 2. Yes, the quarterback 2 overall, not a quarterback 2, not outside of the top 12. The quarterback 2 the past 4 weeks. Ty, do you know where he's at on the season in terms of all quarterbacks?
If I'm not mistaken, he's the quarterback 11.
He's the quarterback 11. He is a quarterback 1 on the season in 12-man leagues. Are you kidding me? For how bad he's looked on the NFL field. He's incredible for fantasy. I love that man. 7+ rushing attempts in every game this year. 8+ in 8 out of 9 games. He's hit double digits in 4 games this year. Justin Fields, he's going to look awful throwing the football. He's going to. I'm going to tell you that right now. I don't need to spoil that for you. He's not going to get it done with his arm at all whatsoever. But that's okay because Miami's sneaky allowing the 5th most rushing yards to quarterbacks this year. That might be because of matchups and whatnot, but like if they've been able to be exposed that way in the past, I'm totally going to be able to think. I'm thinking Justin Fields is going to have to scramble quite a bit, especially with Bradley Chubb. I don't know if he makes an impact right away, but that only makes things more likely for Justin Fields to have to get out of the pocket, scramble around, and I think Justin Fields winds up as a top 10 option once again this week. That being said, I do need to make this clarification because I believe I am on the record saying that I 1000% do not believe in Ohio State quarterbacks translating to the NFL. They never have. They never will. So Justin Fields he's going to stink as an NFL quarterback. But I am 1000% on the Justin Fields train as a fantasy football quarterback going forward. Bustin' Fields, baby. Fire him up this week. With how many quarterbacks are on bye, too?
Yeah.
Like if you got a Dak Prescott, Justin Fields should be your number 1 streaming option this week.
Easy.
So, Tyler, you went with an NFC North player at your quarterback position in Kirk Cousins. You go with another NFC North player here as your running back start of the week.
Going with Jamal Williams.
Sneaky good play this week.
And everyone, I know what everyone's saying. They're saying, wait, isn't he the backup? What do you mean start him? You're questioning me wanting to start the running back 15 on the year, the guy that has 8 rushing touchdowns on the year. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say that Jamal Williams has deserved all of the carries that he's gotten so far this year. Swift has not been 100% all year. He's missed a game or two. It has just kind of fallen into Jamal Williams' favor more than it has been like Williams actually like earning anything. Here's the thing. He's getting goal line carries. He's getting enough volume to stay relevant. It may not be super great receiving work, but again, this offense can actually move up and down the field, okay? And I forgot to mention this right away. But you know how I mentioned a revenge game for Kirk Cousins?
I do remember that. That was only a few minutes ago.
This is also a revenge game part 2 for Jamal Williams going up against the Green Bay Packers. And I know that Jamal Williams played with Detroit last year, and so it could have been last year. La-di-da-di-da. I don't care. Still a revenge game.
Against his old team.
Against his old team. In Green Bay, here's the thing. Green Bay is allowing the 2nd most rushing yards on the year to running backs. No Devondre Campbell. Yeah. No Devondre Campbell for the Packers this week. So it's Quay Walker, who's a rookie, and who? Who behind the defensive line who have not been super great in stopping the run. I like Jamal Williams this week. I like Swift as well, but I have to tamper the expectations because he's not 100%. I don't have to tamper my expectations on Jamal Williams. Give me a touchdown, give me 50, 60 rushing yards, a catch here and there. That's 13, 14, 50 fantasy points.
Yeah, could easily wind up as a top 20 play on the week. I don't think that's all the realm of possibility at all. My running back start of the week. Surprise, he's actually the running back 1 on his team. Did you know that? That's kind of crazy. Antonio Gibson.
Oh, no, you did not just say that. You did not just say Antonio Gibson. Oh, no.
I did because he got the start last week, and he turned it in for a nice fantasy day at least. This is far less about the rushing work for Antonio Gibson. Like, I'm not expecting him to torch and carve up the Minnesota Vikings run defense on the ground, but he's seen 4+ targets in 6 out of 8 games this year. Last week he went 7 targets, 7 receptions for 58 yards and a touchdown. He's caught a touchdown each of the past 2 weeks. And now you have J.D. McKissick, who is out this week with a neck injury. And McKissick, I believe, still saw 4 targets last week, if I'm not mistaken. He might have even seen 5. Those are all going to funnel to Gibson. Those are all funneling to Gibson. So Like, I think that 7 number from last week is going to be sticky for this week. And Minnesota's they're sneaky allowing the 11th most receiving yards to running backs this year. Not that that's like a top 10 number or like an astounding number, but like while Brian Robinson is busy trying to just run the ball straight up the gut of the defense, Antonio Gibson's going to be working on the fringes, picking up those extra yards with Taylor Heineke at quarterback now, who has been checking down a lot more to Gibson recently. So I really like Antonio Gibson this week. I think he's a top 20 play. When he comes out of this week, 14 plus fantasy points. I will tip my hat and say you're welcome. So yeah, fire Gibson up this week. I would not be afraid to start him. And Tyler, for your wide receiver start, you're going with another Washington Commander. Not another, but in addition to my Gibson, you are now adding
the scary Terry himself, Terry McLaurin.
Put it in reverse, Terry.
Put it in reverse, Terry. Oh no, Terry. Here's the thing. Terry McLaurin has been really, really good since Taylor Heineke took over for Carson Wentz. Like, really good. He's been the wide receiver 10. Averaging like 17 fantasy points a game, I think. Not too shabby. Nothing
Not
to,
too bad. I'm glad I
nothing.
got an offer for him the week Taylor Heineke came back. I didn't think it was that great, but I got him in a trade offer, and I gobbled it up, and I've been playing him ever since.
Dameon Pierce for Terry McLaurin and 3 firsts deal. Thank you. I
don't have him in Dynasty.
I know you don't.
You goof.
I know you don't. Here's the thing. Minnesota just bleeds yards and receptions to wide receivers. They're top 5 in yards allowed. They are, I want to say top 8, I believe, in receptions. Like, Minnesota's defense can be simply stated as bend but don't break. So while I don't think maybe McLaurin finds the end zone, maybe it's Curtis Samuel. Who knows who scores? Who gets a receiving touchdown? Who knows? But receptions and yards will push McLaurin to a top 15 finish on the week. I'm confident in it. Fire up Terry. Fire up Curtis Samuel even. It's going to be a good week for Commanders wide receivers, but it's not going to be good enough because the Vikings are still going to win.
Yep, 100% agree. Skull Vikes. Skull Vikes. Yeah, you got the shirt on even. My start of the week. I'm going to go with Tyler Lockett this week. I'm not going to go on the record and say I think this is his 40-point week that he drops every year. I don't think that's this week. But Arizona has been allowing the 6th most fantasy points to wide receivers the past 3 weeks. And you look at Tyler Lockett's last 4 matchups with Arizona. I know it's with Russell Wilson, but hey, look, Geno Smith, he's been pretty freaking good this year. Tyler Lockett's last 4 matchups with Arizona, going back to 2020. 9 targets, 9 receptions, 67 yards, and a touchdown. This was Lockett's 50-burger. 15 receptions on 20 targets for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. 5 receptions on 5 targets for 98 yards and 2 touchdowns. Last year, 4 receptions on 5 targets for 115 yards last year as well. He's gone over 15 fantasy points in each of his last 4 games against the Cardinals. Look, I know they got Ken Walker now, and that dude is nice with a capital N-I-C-E. But I got a feeling about Lockett this week. I just do. I think it's going to be a really nice Tyler Lockett game. Again, this Arizona secondary has not been good as of late. The Seahawks team needs to get back on track. Geno's been playing really, really good this year. I think Lockett's a fine start to give you 15 plus this week. Even if you get a 4 for 115, right? That's fine. That's fine in my book. I think Lockett has that in him this week. So I would go ahead and not hesitate on Tyler Lockett this week. Let's bring it home, Tyler, with our tight end starts of the week. You've had Kirk Cousins, Jamal Williams, and Scarence Terrence. Who's your start of the week at tight end?
I'm going with Evan Ingram this week at tight end.
Oh, Mr. Butterfingers himself. Actually, he's been really good this year, though.
He's been really good this year. And if you are looking for a tight end, streaming, your starter got injured for whatever reason. I don't think any tight end really got injured, but again, my point is if you're looking for a tight end, if Evan Ingram is available, you should probably go pick him up. Because the man is a tight end 10 on the year. And not just that, he's been finishing inside of the top 10 tight ends 3 of his last 4 weeks. He's finished as a tight end 6, a tight end 7, a tight end 9. And he's steady, and he's getting a steady volume. Like, he's getting like 4 or 5 receptions, 6, 7 targets a game. For that kind of consistency out of a tight end spot, invaluable, because it is such an up and down position. Best part about this for Evan Ingram this week, he's going up against Vegas, who are allowing the 7th most fantasy points to tight ends on the year. Fire up Evan Ingram this week. The man's hot, and this streak should continue this week.
You got a Dalton Schultz on by. I think Evan Ingram's a fine streamer this week. My start of the week, I think I stole yours. I just got to the dock before you.
Yeah, you did.
Gerald Everett. I finally beat Tyler to the dock. Gerald Everett. Look, no Mike Williams this week. No Keenan Allen. He's going to see an uptick in targets. I know I said Austin Eckler is going to have a massive week. But I think Gerald Everett will reap some of the benefit of that as well. Atlanta's allowing the 3rd most fantasy points to tight ends this year while only allowing 1 touchdown. So it's not like they're allowing a ton of touchdowns and letting up 6 fantasy points that way. Like, Atlanta is bleeding yards, receptions, and targets to the tight end position. They've also allowed 7 tight ends to score at least 10 fantasy points this year. So, and frankly, if you score 10 fantasy points at the tight end position, you're probably going to be top 12 on the week. I think Gerald Everett passes that 10 point mark. I think he finishes as a top 12. Wouldn't surprise me if he finishes even like top 7 or 8 on the week even. So yeah, fire up Gerald Everett if you do need a streamer. I have him plugged in a lot of lineups this week as a filler or a streamer. That wraps out our starts of the week. Kirk Cousins and Justin Fields at quarterback, Jamal Williams, Antonio Gibson at running back, Terry McLaurin, Tyler Lockett at wide receiver, and Evan Ingram, Gerald Everett at the tight end position. Let's bring it home as we always do, Tyler. Let's clip through some player props here, brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. We love our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. You can participate in daily fantasy drafts over there where you literally go through a fantasy draft to draft your team for the week. Super fun if you haven't tried it out already. They have Pick'em. It's their way of playing props. They're over-under props. They have Rivals where you can pin 2 players against each other. One is given a cushion. You can decide which one outduels the other, if you will. You can do that over on Underdog Fantasy down in the description of the audio podcast or YouTube video you are listening to, or go over and use the promo code FELLAS. They'll instantly match your first deposit up to $100. I hand it over to you, good sir. Bring us home with a handful of props here and a few Rivals picks, it looks like.
Yeah, so we've got 8 total picks that we'll be talking about here. We've got 5 individual pick'ems, 3 rival picks, and I'll ask Lucas what he thinks. I'll give some insight as well. And again, you can win up to pretty much 20 times your money based on some of these picks. And here's the other thing too. When you're building out your ticket and stuff, you could do like 3 pick'ems and 2 rivals.
You can mix and match.
You can mix and match. It doesn't have to be one or the other. So if some of these we talk about are intriguing and some of them aren't, that is A-okay. You can mix and match. So
go take a look yourself at the other lines too. We have a few on here, but go take a look at their other lines. Like there's one on here that we aren't going to talk about, it looks like, but I would 100% take Jalen Waddles over this week at 70.5.
Amen, brother. All right. So first one we're going to talk about. Yep. Sorry. First one we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Alvin Kamara. All right. Alvin Kamara has a pick'em line, a higher lower line, you could say, for Monday Night Football. His receiving yard line is at 36.5.
Smash the over. Go take that before Underdog realizes how bad they just botched that. Love you, Underdog. I really do. But that is a ridiculously low line for a guy who's averaging 7+ targets every game without Michael Thomas this year, and now you're without Michael Thomas for the next at least 4 weeks. That's another 8 targets going for Alvin Kamara this week. Divide 36 by 8 for me. That's 4 yards of reception, 5 yards of reception. Are you joking? Like, go take that before Underdog. You're going to listen to this, and the line will probably have already changed. So even what's the highest you would go on this line? Realistically, what's the highest you would go? Because 36.5, I'm smashing that line. And as soon as I hear the fit still at 36, like, you better go take that while it's still available.
I would push closer to 50, 55 even.
I was going to say, I think 45 is where I would like start to be like, I think I'd rather look elsewhere.
Here's what you need to know about Alvin Kamara's last 4 games. He has, mental math, 34 targets over the last 4 games, 6, 9, 9, and 10. So he's averaging like 7 to 8 targets a game. His receptions, 6, 6, 7, 9 the last 4 games. So he's averaging 28. He's averaging 7 receptions a game. His yardage over the last 4 games, he's got 91, 25, 56, and 96.
It's a ridiculously low line. Go take advantage of it.
I think a lot of people, or I shouldn't say a lot of people. I think part of the worry with, I shouldn't say the worry. The reason for the low line is because the Ravens just traded for Roquan Smith. But that shouldn't matter.
No, it shouldn't.
But for whatever reason, it matters to them. So, over. Just so the people know, over, right? Over. Yeah. Okay.
OVER. That spells over. Go smash over. It.
All right, next player we got is Mr. Adam Thielen. His line's at 52.5 receiving yards going up against Washington. Lucas, what are you thinking?
Yeah, this is one of the lines I do like this week. I feel like Adam Thielen has burned me a couple times when I've thrown him in on some of my lays this year, but I do like this line. When you look at, he's had the volume the past couple of weeks. I believe he hasn't dipped below 7 targets each of the past 3 weeks. He finally had the efficiency last week. I believe he was 6 of 8 or 6 of 7 last week for 67 yards. A couple weeks prior, 7 targets, 8 targets, but only 4 receptions in each of those weeks, I believe. So you bump those up, and Adam Thielen adds more yardage there. Yeah, 100%. Like I like the line of 52.5. I think that's comfortable enough for me to include it in a few of my plays.
Yeah, you said he hasn't dipped below 7 targets in the last 3 games. It's actually been the last 6 games. So he gets targets. I found this super intriguing. Thielen has more snaps from the slot than Justin Jefferson this year. That does not mean a whole lot because Jefferson is definitely still outscoring Thielen from the slot. But what I mentioned earlier about Washington giving up yards from the slot, this just favors Minnesota. And I like this 52.5 yard line. I'm giving him like 6 receptions. Again, I'm something similar to what we saw last week against Arizona. That's what I'm expecting for Adam Thielen this week.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Next one we got is my start of the week at wide receiver. We're talking about Mr. Terry McLaurin, okay? His line is at 67.5 receiving yards. What you thinking, Lucas? Are you going over on this one?
I think I am 67.5. That seems really high. What have his lines been the last 2 weeks? What has he been at? I shouldn't say high, but like, go for it. What were they at?
He 5 for 73. First game with Heineke. Second game 6 for 113.
Yeah, I think I'll lean the over there. I'm not like super stoked about playing Terry in some of my lays. I'd rather like Jalen Waddle is a guy I would rather include than Terry McLaurin, but like I do like that line with Heineke. I think Heineke is kind of the one read guy. If Scary Terry isn't open, he's checking it down. He's not going to a Curtis. He's not going to Jahan Dotson's out. But you get what I mean. Like Terry's a first read. So if you're going to make me choose one, I am going to go the over here. I'll throw him in on a few, but I'm not gonna. I don't think he's like my one that I'm including in every single parlay because I feel so confident about it. But I do like the over.
I think the thing that makes it so intriguing for me is that a lot of sports books are favoring the over on 66.5 receiving yards.
It's only 1 yard more.
It's only 1 yard more. So I'll take the over as well. Hence why he's my start of the week. JK. That's horrible reasoning, but you get my point.
Yeah, I'd feel contradictory if you did not take the over because then you're banking on like 2 touchdowns from Terry on Sunday.
More like 4, but you know.
Yeah.
Next guy we got is Austin Eckler, who is quite literally like the wide receiver 1, running back 1 for the Chargers this week with no Keenan Allen and no Mike Williams. His receiving yard line is at 55.5.
His receiving?
I thought his receiving is at 55.5. Maybe. Let me double check.
I thought it was at 53.5 because I literally just put in a ticket for him at 53.5. So if that shot up 2 yards in the last 4,
it is 53.
Okay, I was gonna say, I'm like, if that shot up 2 yards in 40 minutes since we started this recording, yeah, I will take the over on 53.5. Look, he went for 96 in his last game. Now you get no Keenan Allen or Mike Williams. Look, he's the guy. He is the number 1 guy, and I think Herbert's going to start taking that check down more frequently now. That's kind of how this offense has been run this year, too. Like, the play calling hasn't been great. It's been a lot of stuff underneath and in the flats. Herbert hasn't been pushing the ball down the field as much this year. So I think this favors Eckler a ton. I think we see another 10-target game from Eckler. Again, at that point, you're looking at 5.5 yards of reception for him to hit the over if he catches 10 passes, right? And that's not a guarantee, but Eckler will see more than 5.5 yards of reception. That's kind of my point by saying that. So yeah, I will take the over on 53.5 receiving yards because he'll be the wide receiver 1 for this team.
Exactly. I think 53 is intriguing. He's only, let me double check this. He's only gone over that twice on the year, maybe 3 times. Which is weird to me because he gets the volume, but he doesn't get a whole lot of yards along with the catch.
Right.
But I think that's nullified by the fact that, again, no Keenan Allen, no Mike Williams.
Right.
And they're going to need to get the ball out quick.
Yes.
And if it's not quick, then it's a dump down. So, Eckler over. That's 4 straight overs. And guess what? I don't think it's stopping because we're talking about Aaron Jones next, going up against the Detroit Lions. His rushing yard line is at 67.5.
Yeah, I'll take the over on that. What have his lines been the last 2 weeks? He's gone for 20 plus each of the past 2 weeks. I don't know. I think he's only hit this line once in the past 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
So yeah, the other game it was mostly receiving, but if you're playing the Detroit Lions, I would rather bank on Jones going over 67.5. But I'm also terrified it's gonna be a New York Giants game for the Packers, where they just put the ball in Aaron Rodgers' hands and just like do it for no reason. When the run game is working just fine and they just put it in his hands. I'm a little bit scared of that. So is there a fantasy points line for Aaron Jones right now?
Oh, let me double check that.
Because if his line is anything below 14, I'm going to take the over.
There's no fantasy point line just yet. But
okay.
there is.
If there is, though, go. What was that?
There's a 30.5 receiving yard line.
Oh, yeah, I will take over on that. Well, what's he been at receiving wise though? That's my other question.
Gone over once in the last 3 weeks.
Okay, I would rather lean the rushing at 67.5.
I think the thing that pushes me over for the rushing yards is Green Bay kind of broke the streak of like putting it on Rodgers to win them the game. And they relied on the rushing game. I mean, Aaron Jones at 20 carries, even though they were playing from behind.
Yep.
And Aaron Jones put up 143 rushing yards on the Buffalo Bills. So to me, it shows like, no, this rushing attack is really good, and it's just Matt LaFleur just kind of being a little stubborn. Aaron Rodgers being a little stubborn too. You could say maybe calling plays at the line of scrimmage. But I think that what the team saw against Buffalo is, oh, wait a second, like we actually can run the ball really, really well. Mix that with Detroit's defense that can't slow down anyone on the ground. think this is a fair over for Aaron Jones, but I think you have to recognize that this could also be like you said, a Giants game for the Packers, and I don't know.
It'll be frustrating.
Here's how I see it. If Jones goes over, hooray. If he goes under, it's because the Packers lost, hooray.
Yeah, it's a win-win as a Vikings fan, really.
Exactly. So now we're going to get into the rival picks. And just to recap the higher lower pick'ems for the individual lines, we said over on Kamara receiving yards, over on Thielen receiving yards. Sorry, and Kamara's line was at 36.5. Thielen's line at 52.5, over. Terry McLaurin's line at 67.5, over. Eckler at 53.5 receiving yards, over. And Aaron Jones at 67.5 rushing yards, over as well. All overs. Because where's the fun in taking the unders?
Life's too short to take the under.
Exactly. Live on the edge a little bit, you know? On to the rival picks. We're going to start off with the battle of the quarterbacks for, I think this is going to be like game of the week between the Bucs and the Rams. Let's talk about the quarterbacks, like I mentioned. Tom Brady versus Matt Stafford in passing yards, with Matt Stafford getting a 23.5-yard cushion. Who are you taking on that one?
I want to know what you find intriguing about this one, because I see this and I'm like, I don't want to, like, both of these quarterbacks have been far below expectation this year. So I want to hear what you find so intriguing about this first, because I look at this and I'm like, I don't think I'll throw this in anything this week. If you're going to ask me to pick one, I'll take Brady, but like, I don't find this very intriguing at all. So I'm curious why you do.
I just don't think the cushion's big enough for Stafford.
Which is fair. I mean, that's kind of the fun of the rivals, is you play the game of the cushion as well.
Mm-hmm. Tom Brady, last 6 games, passing yard total, 271, 385, 351, 243, 290, 325. He pushes 290-ish, right? Stafford over the last 6 games. He had a bye in there, but 272, that was back in week 2. 249, 254, 308 against Dallas, 253, 187.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from there on that then. Like I said, I would lean Brady originally because I trust him to actually, throw the football better than Matthew Stafford, for lack of a better like phrasing or reasoning. But yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting that just like stuck on a resonator, because I look at that and I'm like, I'm not super intrigued, but when you do the math, it makes sense.
Stafford's individual line is at 248.5, and Brady's is at 274.5.
Oh, interesting.
So you add the cushion just to the individual lines, and Brady still wins.
Yep.
I think Brady could go for 300. That's me.
Oh yeah,
that's just me. That's a me thing.
I think he could as well. I could see this being a fun shootout, just like it was in the playoffs.
Bingo. So we got Brady over Stafford, passing yards. Next, we'll go to the Windy City for Miami in Chicago. We're looking at Tyreek Hill versus Darnell Mooney in receiving yards. The leading wide receiver in yards in the NFL, Tyreek Hill, going up against the very disappointing Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney is only getting a 45.5-yard boost to his yardage total.
This is just like the Alvin Kamara one. You better go take the Tyreek Hill on this before Underdog realizes Tyreek Hill's going to go for 120 in this game. And that means Darnell Mooney needs to put up 75. And has he done that once this year? I believe he's done it exactly once. I think exactly once he has.
Yeah, I think just once.
Which is just silly. This is just a silly line. It's Tyreek Hill. I don't think we need to discuss this anymore. Like, we're going to explain this into exhaustion, and this is the easiest Tyreek Hill.
This line, this cushion, I should say, this 45.5-yard one is interesting because usually you would expect that on, I can't tell if this is really just like we don't believe in Tyreek Hill, or if this is no, we like Darnell Mooney, and this is kind of a trap for those that want to go for Tyreek Hill. But it doesn't matter. And I think the stat that I calculated earlier today, in games with Tua at center for the Dolphins, Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill account for roughly 70% of all passing yards or all receiving yards
That surprised me
in games. And there's only been one game where Waddle has outgained Tyreek Hill. That was against Buffalo. And so you're going to sit here and tell me that Darnell Mooney is a better... And granted, look, Darnell Mooney has looked a little bit better recently. I mean, he put up 70 yards last week. Oh, hold on. Give me a second here. He put up 70 against Dallas. He put up 68 against Washington. He put up 94 against the Giants. He's had games, right? But essentially what this cushion is saying is Darnell Mooney gets 100 yards. I'm expecting 60-ish yards. And Tyreek Hill is not going to get 100 yards. Do you see why that sounds fishy now? Do you see why we're going all in on Tyreek Hill on this one?
Take the Tyreek Hill.
Take the Tyreek Hill. Please. Please. Last one. This is not the most enjoyable one, but I think this is a little too obvious to not take. This is Tyler Conklin versus Dawson Knox, the battle of the tight ends in receiving yards, with Tyler Conklin getting a 6.5-yard boost to his yard total at the end of the game. What you thinking?
Yeah, no, it's Tyler Conklin here easily because I'm going to take the guy who gets more volume than the guy who is touchdown dependent, because that's what you're looking at with Dawson Knox. And this isn't even fantasy points, right? But Dawson Knox has never been a volume guy. Tyler Conklin without Breece Hall has seen a ton of volume, and I think he's going to continue getting a ton of volume. If you're giving me 6.5, Tyler Conklin can go for 60. Dawson Knox ain't going to go for 50. I'll tell you that right now. So I like Tyler Conklin there with the 6.5 point cushion. This is more obvious than it appears.
Here's the best thing about Conklin, too, and really for the Jets. No Corey Davis. No more Breece Hall, as you mentioned. Elijah Moore is, non-existent anymore.
Right.
So the only two people that Garrett Wilson has to throw the ball to...
Zach Wilson.
Sorry.
Garrett Wilson going to throw the football to himself. Yes, sir.
Yes.
He said, watch me chuck this ball 45 yards up in the air and sprint underneath it.
That's how the Jets can beat the Bills, is just give the ball to Garrett Wilson and let him do everything. No, Zach Wilson will only have Garrett Wilson and Tyler Conklin to throw the ball to. Volume is there for Conklin. Dawson Knox's highest yards total on the year is 41, and that was in week 2.
Gross. That's exactly what I was talking about.
He just does not get enough for me to say, wait a second, this is going to be close. This really isn't going to be close.
Not at all, whatsoever.
So that'll do it for the rivals, and I'll recap real quick. We're thinking Tom Brady over Matt Stafford with Stafford getting a 23.5-yard boost on passing yards. Tyreek Hill over Darnell Mooney, and Darnell Mooney getting 45.5 receiving yard boost. Tyler Conklin getting 6.5 receiving yards over Dawson Knox. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this, if you like some of these and not some others, that's okay. If you like two rivals and two individual pick'ems, you can mix and match, build out your play. I'm pretty sure 4-leg gives you 10 times your money.
10. 4-leg gives you 10.
It's a good weekend to 10 times your money.
It's a great weekend to 10x your money over on Underdog Fantasy. Love our friends over at Underdog. You can sign up using the promo code FELLAS or the link down in the description of the audio podcast or YouTube video you are listening to. They'll double your first deposit for you up to $100 as a welcome bonus on them. Yeah, you can come play alongside of us. If you like any of these picks, feel free to take them. Or, like I said, Jalen Waddle. We didn't even talk about Waddle. He's at 70.5. I will shoot the over on that in a lot of plays this week. So, if you could add something there, it looks like you're about to.
Just put some respect on Jalen Waddle, please.
That will wrap out this episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. Anything you want to add before we sign off here, Ty?
In the wise words of our fellow colleague and best friend, Cameron Lawrence, keep up the good fight.
Keep on keeping on. Two stooges of the three being dudes. We're the Fantasy Football Fellas. Make sure you follow us on the socials. FF Fellas on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on TikTok and YouTube. Make sure you subscribe. Turn on those notifications. Same for the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts from, Spotify, and join our Chalkboard to join a community full of league winners down in the description of the audio podcast or YouTube video you are listening to. We will see you all next week. Enjoy week 9 of NFL action. We will see you all on Tuesday. Deuces.
Deuces.